Hey. Welcome to episode number 123 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Ratnos, joined by Trell
Yo.
and Tettles.
Yo, what up?
Yo. This week we have some big release news that just dropped earlier today. Of course, it is Blackwing Lair coming live on Season of Mastery now, Phase 3, available just today. So make sure you find out what your BIS pieces are. Good luck with all the new updated bosses, everybody.
Are people still going for hardcore Blackwing Lair? Is that like a thing that people are doing?
I actually don't know if there are, but I do know that the World First Ragnaros like hardcore, a couple people died. I think one or two people died on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are they just going to use 38 people for the Blackwing Lair, or are those people like re-leveling, or what's going on with that? Yeah, these are the kind of questions that I find somewhat interesting, but not interesting enough to actually find the answers to. So
Paste take right there.
We'll see how all that develops. I actually do think a lot of the stuff about Season of Mastery is pretty cool. We also have another less exciting announcement, which is that Eternity's End is coming on February 22nd. That's patch 9.2, and that is in 12 days time from now, or 13 days time for our European friends.
Man, I was really hoping we could make it a full year in this patch. I was really feeling the tormented affix, What is it, like 10 months?
I feel like it's only 7, but yeah.
The patch came out like June?
June? I don't know.
It was June. I think it was like late. I think it was like late June.
Okay, that's not nearly as bad as I thought.
Okay, yeah. I can't count that high anyway, so who knows how
June
many months that was.
29th. June 29th is Chains of Domination release date.
Yeah, so
Well, making things up.
well, I think,
Feels like
the
it's been a
truth
year.
of how he's feeling is very real.
It's only been a casual 9 months. It's 8, but we'll round up.
We also have some confirmation of a lot of stuff that we either already knew or already strongly expected based on previous trends, which is the raid unlock schedule. That is March 1st, aka the second week of the patch. Normal and Heroic open, but the last 3 bosses will not be available. And then on March 8th, the last 3 bosses will unlock on Normal and Heroic, and all bosses will open up for Mythic, and that will mark the start of the Race to World First, except for our Europeans, for whom it'll start on March 9th. Then we have, Raid Finder opening every 2 weeks after that, as usual as well.
I saw some people putting Blizzard on blast for the 12-day notice. Do you guys have any strong opinions on this? Because I actually don't care. I think that it would be better if they would give us more time in advance to know, or at least speculate when the patch is going to drop. Give us a couple of week window. But I think that 12 days is kind of okay for the patch. It does suck for the Race to World First people, though, is the thing. I think that's the biggest issue.
I mean, how much? This is a month's notice for Race to World First, right? For any event is going to start on March 8th, March 9th, right? People are flying out at the earliest, March 5th, 6th. That's so that's still a month in the future. I don't know. I mean, obviously it would be nice to know as far as possible in advance, but the reason they don't want to do that is because they might have to move it, right? They might either have it done early or have it, have to push it back if they put a release date out and then aren't ready for it to come out, right? So
yeah, I think it's fine the way they do it too. I think what
I'd
people
love an extra
are
week, but
people are potentially thinking is that people need 2 weeks to request off, and 12 days is under that limit. But I think they're thinking of requesting off time from their jobs to play the content. And the content doesn't really come on the patch launch. Like we said, it's a month out. So in reality, I think it's totally fine, except for the organizations running the race. But
Yeah,
that's just my 2 cents.
Would you be better off if they gave you just an extra week and instead they pushed it back and they were just it's coming out March 1st?
I mean, potentially in that situation, either way for me, it's totally fine. Because if I wanted to take off work for this and do the Race World First, if I was in one of those guilds, I would have plenty of time. A month is more than enough. But if it launched 12 days away, then no, I would not have time. Another week would make it bearable.
That's fair.
Yeah, it's I mean the other problem, the reason that it's nice that it's soon is that like AWC starts pretty soon after the, and like MDI time trials as well, right? All that stuff is potentially coming right off the heels of this. And if this had launched another week later, it may have overlapped for even harder. So
yeah, they announced MDI and AWC a long time ago, right? Like no matter what, the patch had to come out before those dates.
Yeah, those announcements made me think it was going to be an earlier patch than this as well.
AWC starts March 18th.
Okay, yeah. So
the first day for AWC is March 18th. The Cup. So then the qualifier probably is a week before that.
Yeah. So
ooh, that's gonna.
I wonder what Troll's gonna do. That's the that's always the question, right?
Poor Troll.
I guess he's probably just playing Race to World first instead or something. I don't know. Or I guess he's picking one. Maybe he's asking them if they're gonna need a Windwalker. Yo.
That's also this is even worse than usual for the players that are gonna want to do MDI that are in top 100 guilds, because they're still gonna be progging like most of the week with their guilds that early in the patch, and they're also gonna have to practice for MDI, and that's gonna probably kill some teams.
Yeah, we may end up in a spot where time trials for like are wide open for teams from World Top 5, and like all the teams that have players from World Top 100 below that are bricked.
March 30th, time trials begin.
Okay, so week
like
4 Mythic or something. Yeah,
that's like any World 50 and below guild, right?
Still progging? Last tier was killed pretty quickly, and that there were still only like 30 guilds that had it killed by week 4.
Yeah,
so usually even slightly less.
April 5th is when time trials end. So that's gonna be really tough. But at the same time, they're doing a similar format with the 24 team thing again, aren't they? I guess I don't even know. I think they are.
I also am not sure, but I hope so. That was a cool format.
I don't know why they wouldn't do that format again.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know for sure.
Anyways, this week we have a main topic that is somewhat related to, actually, it's all about 9.2. It's the 9.2 trinkets, the trinkets from Raid, the trinkets from Tazavesh. We are going to take a look at each of them and evaluate them, talk about who might use them, talk about whether they're likely to be good or bad. A lot of this is not... Some of this is based off of stuff we've tested on PTR. A lot of these trinkets haven't really been testable on PTR. A lot of them have been implemented very recently, or dropped from bosses that haven't been tested on PTR, or just haven't dropped for us. So we are not sure on a lot of these, but we do have some ideas, and I think it's always interesting to kind of evaluate these things beforehand. So should be an interesting one. Before we get there, though, we do have some news from the 9.2 patch notes, which were, let's see, we can start off with the Frost Mage nerf saga. This came out, what was it now, a day and a bit ago? Yeah.
Frost Mage nerf arc.
Yeah, Frost Mage got a huge set of nerfs to their AoE and to their Icy Propulsion cooldown reduction and stuff. But then Blizzard changed their mind and gave them back the Icy Propulsion stuff, nerf Frozen Orb a little bit more. So the end result is going to be a quite large nerf to Frost AoE and a slight nerf to their single target, which is good because the single target doesn't really need nerf. Doesn't really need nerfing on that spec.
I actually agree with that, and it's like one of the things too that Icy Propulsion is pretty much how Frost Mage plays right now, where you want 100% uptime on your veins kind of thing, and the fact that they were down to just I thought that Frost Mage was dead whenever those initial nerfs came in, and it wasn't even just like a Mythic plus, oh man, mages are complaining kind of thing. It was like a 50% nerf on 10 targets, a 27% nerf on 5 targets kind of thing. You're like, oh my god. Oh my god, they weren't that far ahead. I mean, they were good, but like, holy shit.
Yeah, that was a big one.
But yeah, now they're back. They're back to being annoying.
My favorite thing was the Feral nerf and the Frost Mage nerf happened like roughly at the same time, and then they're like, wait, no, we can't kill our main character. Let's bring Frost Mage back. Okay, bye, Feral.
Yeah. So Feral was doing ungodly amounts of damage with this set bonus, which it turns out was due to it unexpectedly double and triple dipping with mastery and stuff. So rather than change that, they've just nerfed the number on this by a lot. But they, RIP Feral.
Dude, their 4-set I think is like 2.5% damage now on single target.
Yeah,
it was already
good on AoE, but yeah, it was already not a great single target one.
It was already like 6.5 or something, like pretty low, and then it's just like really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's still going to be a strong tier set in a 5-target situation, but it's not a strong spec in a 5-target situation otherwise. So now it's just not a strong spec in any situation. A couple other slight changes coming to some of the other effects. Guardian set bonus has a nerf as well, although it is now scaling with buffs and legendaries, so it can actually be better, even with the numbers going down.
I missed that one. Interesting.
Yes, it should still be fine. I don't expect.
And a Halls, I tested on Guardian, that did 35% of my damage, just the tier set bonus, and overall before the nerf. So now I wonder what it'll be.
Yeah,
I mean the biggest thing with Guardian is like, dude, they were already tanky. This is not changing their ability to be able to tank any pack. At least in my mind, they were good, but kind of like a Halls of Atonement specialist. Maybe Troll feels a little bit different. I suspect that's still the case.
It's definitely still the case. It doesn't improve their survivability hardly at all. Whereas most other tanks, their 4-set gives them like a massive bonus to survivability.
Yeah, Guardian was the tank that didn't really need a survivability tier set though, which I think the tier set's going to work out just fine for them.
Yeah, honestly, they're still in a good spot. Like Guardian's still very, very good. Top 3 tanks for sure.
We also have some changes to reputation gains. So they have made it so that the rares are going to give less rep, and the world quests and world boss and bi-weekly quest are going to give more rep. So that's going to be really nice for anybody who's trying to get the rep that they need for the legendary pattern. So for those who don't know, the way that the rep works is there's not any power behind Honored. There is slight power behind Revered, but that power is also behind Chapter 7. So as long as you are earning rep at a pace that gets you to Revered by the time Chapter 7 comes out, which you can now do without killing a single rare, you will get all that power on as early as possible, right? And that power is not very much, because you get the belt even without the rep, but you get the ability to craft the legendary effect onto another slot with the rep, which is nice, and it will be higher itemable. It's worth getting. It's definitely worth going for this rep. It's a couple percent, but it's not the end of the world. But now you can get that just by doing the world quest and the all the big objectives, and you don't have to go and Korthia hunt every rare, which
it's like the difference between 265 and 291, right?
And the difference between belts and some other slot, which is nice and good stats. So it is a gain, but it's not like the huge spike that the legendary power itself is.
Am I dumb? I don't understand why people were complaining.
Well, people were complaining before this was the case, when you did need to kill rares to get to the Revered at the same time as Chapter 7. But yeah, I agree. Even that was a lot less offensive than Korthia, because again, you didn't have to kill every rare to get to Chapter 7. Even with the old system, you didn't have to kill every rare to get to Revered at the same time as Chapter 7. And even if you were like a couple days late, also didn't really matter.
Yeah, I thought it was just because of the grind from Revered to Exalted for the conduit upgrades.
So that is the power that is still behind the rep. Exalted, which you can potentially get on week 5 of Mythic if you do everything, maybe, is the ability to upgrade all your conduits to item level 278. But in order to do that, you also need Keystone Hero, 3,000 score, Mythic the Jailer, or Gladiator. You need one of those 3 and Exalted, which for a lot of players is kind of out of scope, right? Like by the time they get one of those achievements, they will already be Exalted without grinding everything. For some players, such as me, it might be worth actually hard grinding this to try and get this just before we kill the Jailer to get a little power spike. But we'll see. I'm kind of off it. I don't know.
I definitely do think that like if Blizzard's going to put anything behind player power, they really need to understand like kind of the grind that they're imposing on their player base, and that they're going to feel like the player base is going to feel obligated to do the grind regardless. But at the same time, this
I thought this was fine for on those metrics, like compared to Korthia. If you look at Korthia, it's like, oh, here's a 9-week long grind that is completely just based on how fast you can grind the Archivist Codex, right? And it's if you do 50% of the rares, you're going to get there in twice as long as somebody who does all of the rares each day, right?
Sockets were a massive damage upgrade too. These are just conduits, and you get like a collection of conduits at max level, and that's kind of cool. And then one piece gets a slight damage increase, which that's going to equate to like a 0.3% damage gain or something like that in total.
Right. And you need Keystone Hero or Mythic the Jailer or Gladiator as well, which again, that's another high bar that gates that for people for whom that bar isn't realistic. There's basically no power behind this rep at all.
We just have no way of grinding sockets, right? That's actually it's not in Zereth Mortis rep.
At least as far as we can tell, there's nothing in the PTR yet lets you grind sockets. So sockets will be coming from RNG socket on gear, as it did before patch 8.3, which...
Well, but you can also transfer a socketed piece into a tier slot, right?
That's true, yeah.
The
so
conversion system.
Your tier will be relatively easily socketed, but the other slots, yeah, you're just coin flipping.
I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
Adding sockets to gear was a mistake. I know it was heavily asked for, but I actually view it as a mistake because it's so stupid hard to get an upgrade on a piece of gear during a raid tier before you had the like grinding of sockets unlocked. Unless it was like an expansion-wide system, and they were down to give you that, I felt like the way that we had grinding sockets on gear was just a mistake.
Yeah.
I actually liked it. I have the opposite opinion, but that's just because I felt like my character was complete at a certain point in both those seasons. Like there was no point for me to like try to RNG socketed piece from Mythic Plus anymore, or from BFA and Legion try to Titanforge something randomly and get a slightly better thing. But I don't know. I could see it both ways for sure.
Yeah, I definitely see both sides of this. For me personally, it's it made the grind something I had to do, right? But if it hadn't been for that, there would have been some other reason they would have put in that would have made the grind something I have to do, right? There's always some incentive to do the grind. And then I will say though that it is annoying that like, oh, your 252 socketed ring, that's staying all the progression next tier. That is never getting upgraded. You can't beat that with new tier items on a reasonable time scale unless you get really lucky. So
that was the part of it that I hated. I didn't think it was I really don't think it's that egregious. I think it's like in the grand scheme of things a very small complaint.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I just think the method of acquisition last patch was the problem. Like you got every single socket and every single conduit upgraded at the exact same time, right at the end of this really, really, really bad grind, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they could have like spread it out a little bit,
Or if it was an expansion-wide system where you could just like socket a gear as you obtained it, and like you really notice like the difference between like I wore 226 rings all of Prague. Like, why did I wear like because I wasn't able to socket my rings, I had to wear 226 rings all of Prague. That seems like at least in implementations, that felt like a mistake.
Okay,
so there can be different implementation methods.
Expansion-wide system in patch 10.0. You can when you finish the grind, you get to socket like your helmet and your shoulders. And then in patch for the rest of the expansion, you can just always socket any helmet and shoulders. Then in patch 10.1, when you finish that grind, you can now socket helmet, shoulders, necks, and bracers. And then in patch 10.2, now you can do rings and those. And then in patch 10.3, once you finish the grind, now you can socket everything.
I do think that there should be less like system bloat. I feel like we got a lot. I feel like we've been getting a lot every expansion though.
Yeah, I don't know. I do like the part that Trell's talking about though, where it's like, hey, my guy is now done with gearing this patch, and sockets being both random and possible to add to your gear was a nice way to have everybody win on that.
Yeah. The game is at such a weird crossroad right now. I feel like. Side note, very happy that the Blizzard developers are listening on a lot of things. And like the Zereth Mortis, they've changed a lot about the Zereth Mortis rep and the legendary stuff. And like kudos to them for doing that. It's like those are actually like pretty big changes that they're at least listening to the community on. So that's positive, at least in my mind.
Oh yeah, they've been responding a lot better recently. Like ever since the middle of season 1, I feel like their communication has gone uphill.
The Shards of Domination incident.
Aside from a few things like the shards, yes.
I don't know. It's weird because we got like slammed like 20 weeks of hotfixes in a row to dungeons, to the point where dungeons are actually like very balanced, rather quickly compared to dungeon balancing in the past, especially the beginning expansion.
Except for Necrotic Wake and Plaguefall to an extent. But yes.
Oh, because those are too easy. Yeah, they're not going to buff. Can you imagine them buffing a timer?
Now,
yeah,
you may have heard stuff as well about the Cipher of the First One system. You may have also seen stuff about it being time gated, it not being time gated. There's been posts on like Reddit and on Twitter with pictures of it now having a 1 second research time, and then actually this is only for your alts. Your main doesn't have a 1 second research time. The important thing to know about this entire system, the Cipher of the First One system, is there's no player power behind it. It's just outdoor world power. So you don't need to stress about this system. It does look like it has time gates for the research on your main, and then your alts can just catch up to where your main is for freezies with no time gates. So
all right.
That system sounds good to me, but also there's no power behind it. So if you've had concerns about it that were based off that, don't.
Squishy finished his post on the Necrotic as well. Not to be confused with Necrotic Wake.
Oh my goodness gracious. All right, let's pull this thing up.
Let's go.
Coming hot off the presses here. The Necrotic Mythic Plus Affix has once again been nerfed in patch 9.2. Now it stacks for only 5 seconds instead of 6.
Can you pull up this picture as well, please?
Okay.
Those are not including today's, by the way.
Hang on. All right, we have
Was it all the nerfs?
Yeah, here's the history.
I want to see this.
So we have once again they're hitting Necrotic. I don't know about just doing it by taking a second off of it again. Because so here's the nerf history now. In 9.1, they nerfed how quickly it applied when you were fighting lieutenants, which is big non-CCable mobs like the Risen Warlords in the other side. And then in 9.1.5, they reduced it from 9 to 6. Now they're reducing it from 6 to 5. I mean, this will make it even easier to... This will make it easier to drop it in situations where you can drop it by kiting or stunning. This brings it into AoE stun, even more into AoE stun drop range. I mean, yeah, that's a nice nerf.
It's still just an oppressive affix that you're always going to have like a slower timer because of the affix. No matter what they do to nerf it, as long as it exists like it does for making the tank take less healing and generate less healing themselves, it's just going to be bad. Like 5 seconds is definitely pretty easy to drop on almost every single bolt, but like the fact that it reduces healing taken just causes your gameplay to go out the window just about at all times.
It's also one of those things. I feel like bolstering kind of falls in the same line as like both of them have gotten major improvements, at least this expansion, just as a general rule. But even then, I still don't feel like I don't think that they can land in a spot where those affixes are fun or good. Because so when Storming was released, Storming had a lot of complaints because of how you had to deal with it. But I feel like they've actually landed in a pretty good spot with just how Storming feels to play. I wouldn't say it's like fun, but it's a good affix. I actually do think
it's in a decent spot. Yeah, I think Storming is actually closer to Volcanic than most affixes are in terms of counterplay and like ease of access into high keys. Like it's still hard to deal with in melee, but there's lots of counterplay around it, and there are very few situations where I feel like it's just unfair, if that makes sense.
What do you think about the tank intentionally soaking Storming play? Do you think
that's one of the reasons why I think it's a decent affix now after all these nerfs, because like I've identified lots of times where I can soak 3 or 4 tornadoes in a row as the tank and make it really easy for my group. Like anytime Fleshcraft was up for me this season, I would intentionally like stand on 2 tornadoes spawning, soak them, and then I'd have like 4 seconds of immunity, and I'd walk around and get all the other tornadoes real quick before that fell off.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. I think making Necrotic and Bolstering less impactful is a good change whenever possible. Bolstering, of course, not in this build, but would be cool to see as well. Necrotic, I mean, I think you can make it good with just numbers changes. I don't know if this is quite enough to do that, but at a certain point, the duration is small enough that it just like it's naturally dropping off between autos or whatever, right? It's like, okay.
One thing we should mention about Necrotic is that, like, also the fact that it exists causes the tank to do a lot more non-threat, non-damage globals in their gameplay.
Right. That's probably one of the big problems is this expansion with threat, right?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. That's like, I can't believe I didn't mention this right at the front, but like when a tank doesn't press a damage ability and their first few GCDs, like if they have to leg sweep the slimes and plague fall because they already have 50 stacks in like 3 seconds, then someone's going to die to threat in their group if they're not one of the 3 meta specs that they take the keys. And that's just a problem. Like if they're going to continue to try to force Necrotic as an affix, they need to buff threat permanently.
I think that this may be just like their resolution and them kind of the waving a white flag and being like, all right, next expansion, this affix is gone. Just we'll nerf it again, I guess. I mean, this
God,
is
I hope so.
5th nerf or whatever, 4th nerf. I think that they can reach a spot with bolstering now. So with Necrotic, I'm not sure if they can reach a realistic spot where it's.
I don't know, just nerf it from 2% per stack to 1%.
Okay. I guess.
I think that I swear, like in 30 years, when we look back on the Necrotic affix in the history of WoW, it's going to be like a 2-second debuff, and it applies like a 0.5% healing reduction, and every mob applies it like on their 3rd swing after 12 nerfs.
But I think that bolster can get to a spot where it's okay. I don't know how Necrotic gets there. Dude, if it's 1% per stack, that'd be so funny though.
Yeah, just replace one or both of them with Reaping. That's my bit. Reaping, I miss it so bad. Bring it back.
Dread the platform and calling for Reaping to return again.
Please. Need it so bad.
I'm down. I miss the days of Dratnos Rogue killing all the Reapings.
I loved Reaping. I love padding so much on those spawns. I love jumping on those boxes in Toldagor so they would just teleport up to you.
Oh, that dungeon was doomed.
Yeah,
I do not miss Toldagor. Stop that.
Dude, it was great. Toldagor, the floors were made up, the ceilings were made up, the whole dungeon was basically made up. The walls, many of the walls were made up.
I frequently go back and pull up the Dratnos YouTube page and watch a guide for how to open
all the different cages solo. Yeah,
I remember that one.
The hidden, like a very good hidden gem is that video. It's so good. It starts off just Dratnos head full screen. Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and today I'm going to be showing you how to open all the doors in Toldagor. And all the while, there's this increasingly like high, like super hype music, and just getting louder and louder all the while he's talking.
Dude, it was so epic and cool.
It's a good video.
It was a good video. I actually did watch that at one point to tell rogue players that I played with how to do it.
Yeah, a couple that you were like standing in spots, swiveling your camera, clicking through walls. That was good times.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our tip of the week segment before we get to talking about the trinkets. My tip of the week is if you are a class that has a ground targeted, really any ability, but especially a rotational ability, you should try macroing them to be cast either at cursor or at player. So the way you do this is, like for Death and Decay, for instance, it's /cast, open bracket, at cursor, close bracket, Death and Decay. That macro, that simple. You plop it on your bar where Death and Decay was, and now instead of having to press the button, wait for the server to agree that you're allowed to cast Death and Decay, and then click your mouse once you see the green circle, which will always mean you have some lag over when your global is up. You can instead spam this button, and it will give you the benefit of spell queuing, which means that you can send the message to the server, and it will place it down when you're off global on the server side instead of having to connect back to your client. And it will place it down instantly, so it'll save you on lag and it'll save you on clicks, which also saves time. So if you're any kind of spec that has rotational ground targeted abilities, this is going to be a damage increase for you. And it's also a quality of life increase. Some people like to have stuff also bound to make the cursor for when they need precision. You can also do @player to just drop stuff at your feet, which in some cases is totally fine as well, or it's a fine version of different effects to have. I have one of, like for meta on Havoc, I have all three. I have Havoc, I have @cursor, @player, and the one that makes the actual targeting reticle. So try them out. They have pros and cons, but I would say a default one should be @cursor, not the default.
Question: how do you feel about finesse like utility abilities like trees or Ursul's Vortex? Because obviously for Death and Decay, Earthquake, that kind of thing, maybe even like Mushroom, it makes sense to have it @cursor. How do you feel about more like finesse and utility abilities?
Yeah, I get having those actually be click targeted. I would say try it @cursor and see if you're able to stay precise and get the benefits. Like I think a lot of people have abilities that they just haven't tried putting @cursor, and I think a lot of those people would prefer the @cursor versions. But yeah, if it's something that you like with trees, if it's like, oh, I need to taunt these two mobs and not this third one or whatever with trees. With Heroic Leap, if it's like, oh, I need to see if this Heroic Leap will actually cover this distance, like whether my cursor is over on the other side of the gap or if it's just down at the bottom of the air. Like I get wanting to have those, but I would say have both for abilities like Heroic Leap. It's really nice to have both.
What do you use Ring of Peace, Trell?
I was going to bring it up that you should really be careful with some utility abilities that are critical for like exact positioning, like Ring of Peace, because a lot of times you'll cast it on the ceiling if you do that on accident because there's so much clutter on your camera. Like it's happened to me hundreds of times, and I swear by it, I will never put @cursor or @target or @player on my Ring of Peace ever again. However, I do think there's a lot of really good uses, like Dratno said, and it's actually a damage gain for any damage ability for sure. And speaking of Demon Hunter, if you're a Vengeance DH, you can use @player for your leap, and that keeps you exactly still while not having to worry about that, and that's a really good one to have. Like there was a boss in Legion, Varimathras, where that macro was actually like critical, so you never moved and messed up the positioning with your co-tank.
Yeah, for those sorts of effects, it's actually for both Havoc Meta Leap and for Vengeance Infernal Strike, the behavior is different if you use @player. You're allowed to use AWSD to move around while you're leaping if you do it @player, which can be sometimes slightly useful. It lets you adjust a little bit on the fly while you're in the air, which otherwise you can't do. Otherwise you're hard locked to wherever you put the meta. So
yeah, it's also kind of fun. You're just like super jumping while you run forward slowly.
Yeah. All right, Trell, what is your tip of the week?
All right, so mine is kind of basic, but I think a lot of people may not know this if they don't play a lot of specs. So every class in the game baseline has a 1.5 second GCD, and that's like the amount of time before you can press your next ability, the global cooldown. But the energy specializations in the game, like Windwalker, Brewmaster, Feral Druid, all the rogue specs, all of them have a 1 second GCD. So it's 2/3 of the normal GCD. Haste affects all the 1.5 GCD classes and brings it down depending on your current haste. Like it doesn't snapshot at all. It's just whatever your current haste is at any given second. That's how long your GCD is. But the 1 second classes are all locked to that 1 second no matter what.
Yeah, the 1.5 second classes, if you got 100% haste, your GCD will be 0.75 seconds, and it won't improve after that. It'll stay at 0.75. So there's a serious drop off in the value of haste past 100%.
And that's the reason I bring that up is because things like power infusion, that's the reason why they're not nearly as good for some classes as they are for others. I mean, obviously there's other factors too, but like the haste buff in the upcoming season from the mini bosses is also less impactful for the energy classes. Sorry.
Yeah, it is generally true that the 1 second GCD classes tend to not like haste as much as the 1.5 second classes. Absolutely. Fun fact, Outlaw can get its GCD down to 0.8 seconds during Adrenaline Rush. Right, the rest of the time.
Oh yeah, is Outlaw not fixed? I can't remember. To be 1 second GCDs.
It is fixed, but Adrenaline Rush lowers it to 0.8. It's like a hidden passive of Adrenaline Rush.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Okay.
Which is very cool.
Because I'm sitting there thinking, like, I remember playing Outlaw and my GCDs were very fast.
Yeah, it's during sense. AR. Yeah. All right. We have from Tettles a skip here. Necrotic Wake Warrior skip. Okay.
It's useful for all 7 warriors that do Mythic Plus.
Legimos. All right.
I play with one of those.
So
it's useful for Trell's group only.
Okay. Can't Door of Shadows. Can Jump and Heroic Leap over. Oh, that owns.
Shad move. So if you need somebody to go and start the RP for you, the warrior's probably not going to be doing anything anyways, especially on the trash.
Cool.
So you could send him to go start the RP for you, and then he could just stand there and watch your group fight the trash.
All right, so I'm gonna ping my friend and be like, all right, so if Shroud's down, and you don't have Invis Pot, and you don't have Invis Belt, and you have Leap Up, you could try this in this one particular situation.
Yeah, that's also, dude, Havoc Demon Hunters can meta probably over that. I guess Havoc Demon Hunters can probably just like double backflip or whatever.
Meta, by the way.
you ever used your meta as a travel ability before? It's good times.
Huh.
All right, let's advance to the trinket section of the show. Kind of the main topic we're going for here. So we have a bunch of new trinkets that'll be available next patch, and I figured it would be cool to take a look at them and talk about which ones are going to be sought after. So up first, we have the Tazavesh trinkets, which technically have already been in the game, and in fact, the first of this list, the second of this list, the Ticking Sack of Terror, was used in Race to World First last year at the Tazavesh Mythic level. But next patch, these will all be Valor upgradeable to that high level version, so we might see a lot more of these becoming used in a lot more places. So up first we have... Okay.
Oh, sorry, no. You go.
All right, well, up first we have the minuscule Male Elemental in an envelope, which is a haste trinket that procs a male elemental that throws unstable goods at your target and deals damage. This is the kind of effect that tends to not be tuned that high, but sometimes you'll see things like this, and they can be quite good for specs with high haste, with high proc rates. So this can be the kind of thing that's good for specs like Havoc Demon Hunter that just are naturally sitting around with a lot of haste because they'll hit this proc rate more frequently.
That trinket is also a hasted GCD. That trinket also does have... so not all proc trinkets have some amount of haste on it. If you click on that, you can see that it is also affected by the haste.
Yeah, so that's
at the top.
Yeah, 2.25 plus haste procs per minute. So if you have 50% haste, you're getting 3.5 procs per minute off this thing. Which
I don't.
Yeah.
How does a demon hunter proc this thing with ranged attacks? I gotta know.
Oh, range attacks and abilities. Okay, yeah, that's not a demon hunter back then.
Throw glaive.
I didn't read the ranged part in my brain. So yeah, then the ranged versions of specs that tend to be like this, like Shadow Priest, right? That'll be hasty and procking this.
That trinket sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see anybody wearing that trinket, to be honest.
Yeah, this is also kind of thing where it's like this is single target proc, right, at your target. So this is going to not increase in damage as extra targets are involved, but it is going to reduce in priority damage as extra targets get involved. So it's kind of the worst of all worlds. These trinkets tend to not be good unless they are just tuned very high. And then it's something like Hateful Chain from Sludge Fist, where it's like, oh yeah, this is just doing a lot of damn. Up next, we have the Ticking Sack of Terror, which is the melee trinket from that boss. It's a mastery trinket that says your melee attacks and abilities. So that's how this one's different. Have a high chance to attach a volatile satchel onto your target. Upon reaching 3 stacks or when removed, the volatile satchel detonates and deals fire damage. And the base damage of that fire damage is twice the damage of the male mental procs. It has, let's see, does it have a procs per minute? It doesn't specify a procs per minute, but this was used on last patch and it procced quite a bit, which is why it was used. So I sort of expect that this will be a strong trinket for melee, stuff like Demon Hunter next patch. So
I definitely think that since you're able to farm this and get it at a appropriate item level, I think that a lot of melee, you're going to see them farming this and potentially File from Plaguefall. Yeah. I think that those are probably going to be the two big ones. Assuming it ultimately kind of depends on how the raid trinkets from Sepulcher end up being.
We'll look at those later, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if those are a lot better than the value of these, especially if the sepulcher ones are better on like heroic or normal level, then these trinkets are worth a lot less.
Up next is Codex of the First Technique. This one you've also seen already seeing some use. It is a tank trinket that when you take damage, it can prevent 10% of incoming damage up to a maximum damage absorbed per blow. Wait a sec. So is this a different text than the trinket here, or the tooltip has different text than the?
The tooltip's probably correct.
Yeah. So maybe they changed the effect on this then, because the PTR tooltip now, yeah, it's reflecting a certain amount of maximum damage per blow, which actually potentially makes this stronger than I thought it would be. To just use it ironically.
It was already being used by blood decays in particular, from what I understand, over scale or Aegis. I don't think over Aegis, but over scale in some cases, and the other trinket from Guardian this tier. But that's a decent trinket. Like until you get maybe if the new trinket from the raid is really good, until you get that one, this might be a great filler until then.
All right, up next we have a big one, Solia's Secret Technique. This one can be used by Agi, Strength, or Intellect. It's a main stat trinket. That's always 0.1 towards a good trinket, is when it's a main stat trinket instead of some secondary. Its on use is select a player in your raid, granting them some of their highest secondary stat and granting you a bunch more of that same stat for 30 minutes. Now, the number on this is just better than Ocular Gland, but instead of the downside of Ocular Gland, it has the upside of giving somebody else a little bit of stat. So this is going to be a banger trinket. It's got it lets you pick whatever stat you want, and it's just a stat stick. So I suspect that this will be highly sought after, highly in demand, and you should run any Solia's Gambit keystones that you get to try and acquire this item in the early weeks of the patch, in my opinion.
And while you do that, save Lust for the last 2 trash mobs.
Yes, especially on Fortified. That is very important.
I would suspect that those mobs are getting nerfed at
Hopefully
some point.
They do not arrive on the live servers in that state, yeah. They are harsh. They already had some nerfs on the most recent PTR build, but they could still use another little tap. All right, and then finally we have the first class healing distributor, which, it's
some healers use that. So some healers use it.
Yeah, so it's an trinket that it's got a proc that does a burst of healing split among your target and nearby allies, and it gives you haste, and it deals increased healing when healing multiple allies. So yeah,
I want to say it was like Resto Druid and Resto Shaman that wanted it. There were a couple of healing specs that really wanted it coming into this patch, and I suspect that this is kind of similar to the Sack of Terror. Like if you can get it at a competitive item level, it's probably going to be pretty good.
Yeah, this one drops from Mailroom as well. So Mailroom drops the melee trinket, the range trinket, and the healer trinket. And then Codex of the First Technique, the tank trinket, also drops from Streets of Wonder. The only trinket that drops from Solia's Gambit is the Secret Technique.
Somebody in chat said healers will probably use the Mail Elemental, right? Yes, of course, the Mail Elemental.
Yeah, that's probably true. The healers need to do damage.
Yeah.
They will probably not be using the Mail Elemental. I regret to inform you.
You never know. Maybe that's the only choice they had after they had to give all their loot away to the DPS players.
So true. Those tyrannical DPS players. The healing trinket drop, and they're just like, yeah, I need that. But it's a healing trinket. Trade it. Okay.
Start snapping at the hand it over.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Loot, please. Open trade.
Can you trade that? Stream your screen right now. See if you can trade it. All right, yeah, trade it.
Oh my god. Oh no.
All right, we also have the Rage trinkets. So this is a bunch of the trinkets that are in the upcoming Sepulcher of the First Ones raid. The one at the top of this article, written by a friend of the podcast, Squishy, is Elegy of the Eternals. So this is, again, a Strength, Agi, or Int trinket. And then the equip effect is Weep Before the Eternals, dedicating yourself to their service. Gain 500 of your highest secondary stat, and grant 10% of this bonus to any party members who also serve your covenant. So that's right. From the expansion pack that brought you the What were the groups in Castle Nathria? It was the book, the Denathrius trinket group,
Stone Legion.
and the Stone Legion trinket group, right?
Yeah.
And then in
Chorus, I think.
Yeah,
oh,
Chorus
God.
and Stone Legion
Chorus.
trinket, and then the Wind Fury groups.
Hymnal. It was a hymnal.
Yeah,
it was
Kabbalah's
hymnal
hymnal.
group. That's what it was.
Now we have the elegy groups. So you're going to want to group up with members of your covenant, yell at your raid leader to swap everybody around so that you're in the same group as a bunch of people in your covenant. You know, it's a little bit. It doesn't give you a benefit, so people will probably argue for it a little bit less. It gives them the benefit, but yeah.
So that trinket's showing at 226 item level. That thing gives freakish amounts of stats, by the way.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a crazy amount of stats, right? I kind of don't believe this number. That is an unbelievable number.
I feel like just having to group your party. Okay, so they have to group them by Wind Fury Totem
and
trinket, like what?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I don't know, man.
Maybe this is anti-shaman propaganda, like anti-enhanced shaman. So like this is more valuable to have in your group as the melee group than the enhancement shaman. So maybe that's the reason to like sub them out of your raid again.
So the 4 warrior group is just going to have a 5th warrior instead.
I don't know,
so
man.
They should all be the same covenant.
Enhance kind of pipes harder than warrior, so we'll see.
It's probably true.
True.
They both pipe.
They're both good in raid.
All right. Let's take a look at some of the next ones. There's the first sigil. This also drops from... So the elegy and the first sigil both drop from Prototype Pantheon. This is the one you are not hoping to see. It is also Strength Adjurant, and its on use is gain the power of your... refresh the cooldown of your Covenant signature ability, and gain a bunch of versatility for 20 seconds on a 5-minute cooldown. Now, your Covenant signature ability, that is not Convoke the Spirits. That's Soul Shape. That it is for Kyrian players. This refreshes the cooldown by 20 seconds, or this refreshes the cooldown of Summon Steward. So do not get baited into thinking this is legendary double covenant ability.
That's
power.
terrible. That is
Do you
so
remember
bad.
that? Do you remember
the
trinket?
BOE. There's a BOE at the start of the expansion that had the same text. Yeah.
There may have been one dumbass co-host of this podcast that had purchased that trinket thinking it was something that it was not. I'm not going to name names, but there may have been one of us.
Yeah. So this one's bait. This one's just bad trinket in the pool alongside good trinket there on that boss. All right. Yeah. Then we have the LG, the Eternals. All right. Tank trinkets. The tank trinket is called the Pocket Protoforge. It drops from Lehuvim. And it is main stat, and then taking damage has a chance to fabricate an ally from the Pocket Protoforge, which interferes with your enemy's attacks, assisting in combat and absorbing 14,910 damage. This is 1 proc per minute, and it is not hasted. So that is going to provide you
What's
a
edible
reasonable
on that
amount.
thing?
This was the 226 version, so yeah, it's procking for 226, which is lower item level than you'll see actually in the raid. The lowest you'll see would be 239 Raid Finder. But yeah, it provides a solid amount of, I guess, total HPS, but it's a big amount of absorb, not at a controllable time. So I don't suspect this will be a really sought after trinket for tanks.
If the proc rate is that low, I don't think it'll be anything near what the current choices are for trinkets.
Yeah.
It's going to be like 200 HPS is what I'm looking at in chat from some reputable sources. Like that's pretty bad compared to like Scale, Aegis, the Codex from Tazavesh. Those are all 3 better trinkets by far.
Yeah, and
I suspect at like 280 or whatever item level, it'll probably be double that. But even then, it's still like 400 HPS is like, oh.
Yeah, what? Because 15,000 divided by 60 is like 60,000 divided by 200.
Don't do math. Don't do math on the show. Don't do math on the
Yeah, okay, all right. It does some healing. I will say there's another stealth tank trinket coming in this patch, which is the Fate Scribe trinket, is getting changed. So it no longer forces you to die and then res yourself. Instead, it just procs like the Sun King trinket and prevents your death and heals you. But unlike the Sun King trinket, it doesn't explode for damage to nearby allies and enemies. So I suspect you'll see a lot of tanks putting on the Fate Scribe trinket if they have access to it.
You know what's funny about this is that trinket was absolute garbage the entire tier that it was available from the boss. And then the only reason why it got changed to be useful now, because it doesn't actually kill you anymore, is because someone found an exploit for it on one of the new bosses in the next tier. So they had to change it.
Yeah, well, because it was exploited, it was used on Kel'Thuzad, right, for the same reason, right? You used it, you died,
That's true.
and your tank ads despawned. And that they fixed that after the first week on that fight. Turns out that wasn't the reason the fight was easy. The fight was easy because it was bad. But the trinket remains like an open problem where anytime they design a fight going forward, they need to worry about that trinket being used to mitigate some mechanic that targets tank and just remove it from the game by just having the tank die. So instead, now it's going to behave just like the Sun King trinket, except higher item level, more healing, and no killing of melee DPS, which is a slight downside, but is still better. Okay. So yeah, that is going to be a very popular tank trinket next year, I suspect, is the Fate Scribe one. Healers,
not just for progression, though. Just for progression.
Yeah, for progression rating, for progression keys as well. Cheat Death Trinket's not bad, but you'll probably see key tanks using stuff like Scale and the 9 trinket even still. The 9 trinket I suspect will continue to be the bangingest M+ trinket.
Maybe Warriors will still need the Cheat Death Trinket. Poor Warriors, man, they just can't get any love. But every other tank is so strong now that any kind of throughput trinket is just the better play at this point in the expansion.
All right, we've got some healer trinkets now. The first one is called the Auxiliary Attendant Chime. It drops from Vigilant Guardian, which is the first boss. It's main stat, and it's a proc to apply Absorb to your most injured nearby ally every 1 second for 10 seconds. So when this procs for the next 10 seconds, you're going to give Absorbs to your nearby most injured ally. This is 1.5 procs per minute. It's also not affected by haste, it looks like. So, there's that healer trinket.
I mean,
that's interesting.
It doesn't sound very practical, I think is the biggest issue.
It's nice that it's going to heal you nearby, most injured nearby ally, usually the person who you most want healing on. So, but yeah, it's a small stream of healing. It's also nice that it's absorb as well, so you're not going to overheal that person by accident as well. So, I don't know. Could be worse. The Lion's Roar is another healer trinket. This one drops from Anduin. Its main stat and its on use is Channel the Light for 3 seconds, creating a zone of protection around you, absorbing 20% of all damage taken by allies within, up to a massive total of 70,000 at the 226 version. So this thing is like AMZ levels of how much it'll absorb before it disappears. Your critical heals have a chance to reduce the cooldown by 3 seconds, and it is a 10-minute cooldown, which is, is a large cooldown for this sort of effect.
It's like once an encounter or like 3 or 4 times a dungeon. Like, I'm trying to think of a good use of that, and I think maybe Sanguine Depths would be a good instance for that. Like first boss and third boss.
Yeah. But could also be a reasonable raid trinket, right? Adding effectively a raid defensive. The thing is that the amount that it does, it's still enough to be pretty solid value. It looks like the cooldown reduction effect has about 10 procs per minute. So as long as you're critting reasonably frequently, then you can reduce this 10-minute cooldown by 10 times 3 is 30 seconds every minute. So you can bring it down to about 5-minute cooldown if you're getting all 10 of these procs per minute. So that's
dude. Somebody, one of the Rust of Truth theory crafters says they're both quote dog shit. Yeah, okay. which is what I thought. Like I haven't looked at any of the healing theory crafting on these trinkets. I had a strong suspicion that they were both not going to be good.
Listen, we're just on Copia. We want to make these at least useful sometime.
It's a large barrier. It's a large barrier. It's a distinctive effect.
It's okay if it's used to cheese something. I'm sure it's very good, right? If you're cheesing a mechanic with it.
I mean, or just if you need a raid defensive, it doesn't matter that it's a low rate trinket that does that. It's the only trinket that does that.
The amount of that absorb is so low, though, right?
Is it? I mean, this is the 226. I mean,
it's like a full health bar worth.
Yeah.
Wait, it only gives barrier while you're channeling it. Wait,
for 3 seconds. I mean,
yeah,
I was
going to
say
the
explosion is coming out, right? Like, I don't know.
You do have to channel it the whole time, right? You can't heal as well while it's going.
It's
like
3 seconds.
That makes it pretty bad.
You would use this against like 1 hit of damage, right? And it would be like a global of yours would be this. I don't know. I suspect that this might have some use, especially because the higher level versions of this thing. Let's see. Do we have the higher level versions? It's always notoriously rough to actually see what the higher item level numbers are.
If you click on the proc, you should
we
be
can
able to
straight scale it. Yeah, okay, so 278. Okay.
That would actually be sick as a tank trinket.
Yeah. It is a trinket, unfortunately.
Healer with their actual throughput. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, okay, so I mean this at the mythic level, this thing is going to absorb a total of 141,000 damage. I mean, if you imagine that this is one button that you press that provides 141,000 healing, like, yeah, okay, it's every 5 minutes that you get to do it, but if that's a critical time, I don't know. I think this is a powerful type of effect that is situational, obviously, very situational, but I think there are situations in raid fights where this sort of thing would be good.
Right? I think they're probably just going to end up using Changeling plus the Covenant trinket.
Maybe.
Covenant stat trinket.
I don't know. I feel like using this, like, like on a fight like Kel'Thuzad, where all of the healing is just those bursts of the spires exploding, right? One of those, you're going to use your own personal buttons, but on one of them, you don't have any healer cooldowns, and it's other healer cooldowns that are going on, and you press the Lion Shore trinket, right? And you provide a huge amount of healing as those things are exploding. And that's the only thing that's important on that fight. There could easily be tuning numbers on mechanics of next tier that make this sort of thing useful.
I think it actually is kind of useful for those situations, but I just wonder if it's worth wearing for the entire rest of the encounter.
Yeah, that's it does need to be used for the rest of the encounter. At least it's a main stat trinket, so it's
thank God.
It's not just sitting there giving you mastery. All right, we have some caster trinkets as well. We've got the Resonant Reservoir from Dosegni, which is int trinket. On use, on a 90-second cooldown, fire a resonant bolt at your target, which causes a disintegration halo from its location, which presumably like an AoE halo thing, like the mechanic on the Dosegni fight that you will see when you start fighting her. And it deals damage over time, a 6-second dot, crescendos 3 times before taking it again from the top. So this is a weird tooltip, and the on use here suggests that it's increasing the damage taken from the halo over time as it crescendos, I guess.
So it gets louder, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great language there, Warcraft devs.
Oh, dude, okay, the text they have here is just the mechanic of disintegration halo from the Dosegni fight. They've put it next to it on this article. So this
article's old.
Trinket. Yeah.
Okay, so here's the deal. I was gonna go on the PTR. The PTR is down right now. I was gonna look at all the trinkets. So I had to get an article that was released in mid-January.
Yeah. So I guess there's it probably just pulses 3 times, maybe stacks that dot up on the target. It is a 90-second cooldown, but I don't know. Disintegration halo, that might imply it's an AoE. I don't know. It causes disintegration halo from its location, so this could potentially be an uncapped AoE trinket. I'm not sure. We'll see.
I mean, trinkets like this, they're generally not that great. Maybe if there's, unless they're like incredibly over budget.
Yeah.
The numbers on it don't look good for single target specifically, and so I would suspect that this is not going to be something you're going to run. If it's uncapped on AoE and is doing a stupid amount of damage, then it could have some use in Mythic Plus, but that's the only time it could be used. I don't suspect that this is like a raid trinket.
All right, up next we have Architect's Ingenuity Core. It's also intellect. Its equip is whenever a nearby automa dies, your cooldowns recover 15% more quickly for 10 seconds. Its on-use effect is call forth an attendant automa who channels cosmic damage onto your target over 8 seconds, after which it expires, which hopefully means it dies and procs this effect. and this is a 90-second cooldown on the on use. So just from the trinket itself, if no other nearby Automa are dying, every 90 seconds you get to deal 9,000 damage at eye level 226. This will obviously be higher at the higher item level versions. And you will get 15% more quick cooldown recovery over 10 seconds. So like a second and a half off your cooldowns.
This thing is only good if it works with other people's Automa.
Yeah,
right?
I suspect it will. And also not other people's Automa, but just like the first boss of the raid, you're killing Automa. Lahuvim, you're killing Automa. So
bonus points if they make the radius super small.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that beautiful word nearby. Any Path of Exile enthusiasts where they put nearby and it means there's like 100 different radiuses of nearby and they never tell you which it is.
At least the word recently in Path of Exile is like consistent with 4 seconds, I think.
Yep. Yeah.
Side note, that would be interesting.
This patch, Path of Exile, added a new terminology, in your presence, which also just means some undetermined, unspecified range away from you.
Maybe that means like on your screen currently. So like if you have a better resolution monitor, you have like better stats for in your presence.
Yeah, that'd be good. Let's see if we can find out the range from the effect.
I wonder if this trinket
range, huh?
I wonder if this trinket's worth for casters in Mythic Plus. Like every time you kill an Automa for
it'll trigger off of encrypted.
Yeah, so like you get even more CDR if you're also killing the CDR guy. So like maybe this is a triple range season and the healer wears it, so 4 trinkets.
Yeah. It's 15% more quickly for 10 seconds though. That's not that much oomph.
Here's the thing is like if it's actually good whenever 4 people are wearing it in Mythic Plus, that means it's just broken in raid. If you have I don't know 10 people wearing it.
Well, yeah,
if there's no world where they let that happen.
If you have 9 people wearing this and you synchronize it properly, you would have full uptime on the cooldown reduction. So,
do you remember the oh god, the
sliver
trinket from that was the one, the trinket from Opulence. God, that thing was awful. I can't imagine having to have a rotation of people killing the robot. No.
Dude, the best part about the Opulence trinket was we made our hunter wear one so that he could be in the range stack on Unot. It was an right trinket. Yeah,
I remember going back to farm that with all characters that could loot that trinket during Unot progression.
Yeah, good times.
It's also like purely a single target trinket, yeah.
This thing?
The channel, the cosmic damage. The
cosmic damage is single target, but 15 cooldown recovery often better for AoE than for single target.
Okay.
So it just depends on how that is done. I don't know. I suspect this will be more of a meme, but it might be stackable, or it might be useful in fights where there's Automa. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Reclaimer's Intensity Core is also an trinket. Whenever a nearby Automa dies, you exude Ephemera, healing up to 5 nearby allies over 10 seconds. So I actually think this is probably a healer trinket more than a caster trinket. Its on use is calls forth an Automa medic, which restores mana to you over 10 seconds before expiring. But this is on a 2-minute, 30-second cooldown. So there's synergy with this and with the other Automa trinket, right? If you use this, you'll reduce their cooldowns, and if they use their Automa thing, you'll burst for some healing. Yeah, it's gonna be an Automa tier.
This is a weird synergistic set of trinkets.
Yeah,
signs point towards awful.
Well, no, I mean, even if this effect is awful for healers, if it is giving the DPS players damage when they wear this trinket, guess what? Actually, you know what? Guess what? They're going to wear this one because it's a shorter cooldown and it gives the damage dealers more damage more frequently.
Dude, there's no way they're not going to wear the Covenant trinket. You will not gaslight me to believe that they're going to wear the robot fucking trinket over the LG.
How many trinkets do you think people have?
2, that's the point.
Yeah, one of these and one of those. Dang.
I was just looking at the tank trinket tooltip and it doesn't specify that it's an Automa, but it does say you summon an ally.
Interesting.
So I wonder if that counts toward it as well.
Yeah, an ally from the Pocket Protoforge. It could well be. Let's see if there's a melee DPS version as well. Let's get into the melee trinkets. Bells of the Endless Feast is add to your strength. Your damaging abilities have a high chance to smell out the scent of a delicious soul energy, stacking up to 100 times. At full stacks, a swarm of devourers burst forth, chomping your target for damage. Effects that cause your target to move generate bonus stacks. This is so weird.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
So I guess if you knock them or something.
Oh, I was thinking if they move at all, it's generating bonus
I
stacks.
figured it was like if you ring a piece them, if you typhoon them, if you thunderstorm them.
So I mean, but why is this trinket coming off of Skrillex?
Because it is the devourers are bursting forth, chomping them. So
it's not about the movement; it's about the devourers.
Well,
okay,
that boss has a mechanic where you move and stack, and then the devourer chomps you. So it's sort of similar to that, right? This is 20 procs per minute. So I guess it depends on how many bonus stacks you're getting from the. I don't know. I'm not convinced by this trinket. That the numbers seem.
this is the trinket that you write off, and not the lion's roar.
I'm not writing off the lion's roar. The lion's roar is a unique and potentially powerful effect, and this is like jumping through some weird hoop for not a unique effect, just damage at a low rate.
What melees have a knock? Let's see. DKs have a grip.
Windwalker.
Windwalker has Ring of Peace. That's probably the biggest one. And then
Feral
has Typhoon.
Yeah, I guess Death Grip wouldn't either. So yeah, I don't know. Heart of the Swarm is a strength trinket that's potentially also a tank trinket you could use as a strength tank. It is strength, invoke the swarm, losing the ability to cast or attack, but transforming into a swarm of hungering locusts, gaining movement speed, 100% leech, and dealing shadow damage between all nearby enemies over 3 seconds, and the damage increases up to 5 enemies.
Well, it's definitely not a tank trinket. Oh my god.
Dude, what do you mean? It's 100% leech.
That sounds cool.
Dude, you press this button, bang. Press this button while you're out of range of your healers, doing a job on like a far platform, coming back. While some mobs are coming with you, heals you for a bunch as you're doing it.
Lose the ability to cast. Yeah,
you gain movement speed. You're losing the ability to cast. Presumably, you're not losing the ability to dodge, block, parry. Although if you are, that would be very bad.
You probably are until they fix that. That's always baseline.
If you are, then that would make this a lot worse. But I mean, this will heal you for 21,000 over 3 seconds on single target, but more on AOE. And your dots will continue to tick, and all of your dots will be giving you 100% leech as well. And any self-healing effects on yourself will also have 100% leech. So, again, situational strength. I could see this being good on stuff like Sylvanas platform jobs, on Sylvanas fight, on both phases 2 and 3. I could definitely see fights where this sort of thing is worth messing around with.
Yeah. I think it's a cool idea. I think in reality, if you're in that situation, you'd rather have an on-use absorb trinket.
Probably, yeah.
Honestly, but I mean, who knows? Maybe you'll have some situation where this is extremely niche and the best play.
Yeah,
best for Blood DK.
Yeah, it does give movement speed. Pulsating Rift Shard is up next. It is add to your strength. On use, places a rift portal in front of you that charges for 4 seconds before unleashing a blast of cosmic energy in a line. Enemies hit by the blast have their essence plundered, granting you a shield for 20 seconds, which absorbs a boatload of damage, and damage is increased for each enemy struck. This is a 2-minute cooldown, though. Okay.
So up to 5 enemies?
It's a 2-minute cooldown. Yeah. Oh, wait. Maybe it's a 3, actually. Hang on. Yeah, no, it's a 3. Okay. So it's a 2 on one of the pages, but I guess it's a 3. And yeah. I don't know. It gives you a fairly large shield. I wonder if you could use this as in
might be
plus ever. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a decent replacement for scale, maybe.
Yeah.
If it's tuned right.
Yeah, potentially. I don't know. I mean, you have to wait for 4 seconds.
Delayed too.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's tuned well, even if it's better than Shard, I think I would, Scale. I think I would still take Scale over that just because it's on demand exactly when you need it.
I wonder if DPS players could use this as like if you need a tank, like a tank trinket for DPS. You know, like we used to in Legion use tank trinkets as DPS under some circumstances, right? And this is one that would do that while also dealing, you know, some damage.
Yeah, sure. I agree. It's probably good for that because, like, as a DPS, if you're looking to avoid a one-shot, you're looking for an absorb trinket, and this would be a massive absorb that you can get, at least in a timely manner.
The absorb is not that big on single target is the problem. It needs to hit multiple targets. Usually you'd use a trinket like this as a DPS on single target, like on a boss fight. Also, just boss fights you don't really need that anymore in this expansion.
That might be the new replacement for Great Push melee players at the very, very highest level of Court of Stars when they had to wear tank trinkets to survive the last boss.
True.
Somebody call Speed. He was in here earlier.
Could be. We also have the Cache of Acquired Treasures. This is an Agi trinket. Equip, periodically rummage through the cache, finding a new stolen weapon. And the on use is grab the weapon from the cache, gaining its benefit. So
what?
It like cycles through the weapons, and then you can press the button to grab whatever weapon is currently available. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea what the weapons are yet?
I don't have a list for this one, no.
Side note, another good thing from the Rift Shard, you may be able to pull through walls and mists with it.
Oh, definitely possible, yeah. By pressing that button.
I don't know anything about the cache.
Yeah, we'll see what the weapons end up being. But yeah, it's a cool effect. There's something similar coming later as well from the Jailer. Pretty similar concept.
We do know more about that.
Yeah, we have more information about that one at least. Up next is Earthbreaker's Impact, which is a Halandris trinket. It's also add to your strength. On use is cause the ground to quake beneath your feet, dealing damage split between all nearby enemies, increased per target hit. While quaking, you can sense nearby tectonic weak points. Moving over a weak point will deal additional damage to all nearby enemies, and it's on a 3-minute cooldown. So potentially a M+ trinket if it's dealing enough damage for melee, but definitely not that exciting of a rage trinket.
It's having to walk. Okay, so I mean they've had trinkets like this in the past where you have to like walk and pick up things like the Engine of Eradication from Tomb of Sargeras is one that comes to mind, and they're always like really obnoxious unless they are incredibly overtuned, which I mean Engine was.
The sheet music from this expansion, terrible trinket.
Yes, more often than not they end up being awful and unfun because you have to gimmick them super hard. Maybe this thing will, like, what does it mean? Damage increase per target? Like, is it an exponential damage trinket?
No. This is the standard text, right? It's split damage, but damage increases per target. Total damage increases per target hit. So,
it's split. Never mind.
Yeah.
All right, this thing's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
I mean, I think you'd rather wear the Rift. Like in this, as soon as you have 2 targets, you're already wanting to wear the Rift Shard.
The DPS Rift Shard, hell yeah.
Well, both of them have the same text, right? Where it's like damage increased for each enemy struck. Although this one says up to 5 targets, and this one just says damage increased per target hit. But both are split damage. Actually, maybe this one's not even split damage. The pulsating Rift Shard doesn't say split anywhere. I assume it is. It
doesn't.
Be weird. I guess damage increased for each enemy struck up to 5 enemies. Almost always that means it's split, but we'll see. All right, up next we have the Intrusive Thought Cage. This one's add to your strength. Establish a link deep within your target's mind, increasing your dodge rating and draining health over 6 seconds. It's a 3-minute cooldown. If the link is still intact when this effect ends, which I guess means if you don't get too far away from them, their mind shatters, dealing AoE damage and horrifying in 8-yard range for 3 seconds. So this one looks quite compelling for the old Mythic Plus, potentially, as a AoE Horrify trinket. Horrify is effectively an AoE stun that's not on DR with anything else. Potentially pretty cool for that.
Is that an AoE Horrify? Or
yeah, 8-yard AoE Horrify. I guess it's when it says horrifying them, it's somewhat ambiguous, but I read it as the AoE is the Horrify as well.
That's interesting. I can't think of a situation off the top of my head, but maybe there'd be something in Mythic Plus you'd want that for.
Yeah.
It's after. So it's an AoE Horrify after 6 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think you could use this as a tank right?
Yeah,
So, like,
you definitely use it. I mean, it gives you dodge.
well, I mean, the dodge is you could use this as a DPS for sure for the drain, but yeah, so you use this on pull and it just links a target, right? It does a bunch of damage to that target and drains them, right? So it heals you for a bunch as well. It's giving you dodge on pull as well. It's giving you threat on that target, and then when it ends, it's a 3-second horrify on the whole pack. So
I can see it being good in
pull.
like halls, like for obliterators and gargants and
Yeah,
stuff.
or just like necrotic week, right? 3-second horrify followed up with any CC, bang, dropped your stacks. It's
holy shit, true.
Yeah.
Well, do you think the Horrify breaks on damage or not? I was assuming it breaks on damage.
Oh,
it depends. Yeah,
well,
Horrifies often don't, but sometimes they do. But usually Horrifies don't.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. If it does not break, then yeah, that's actually good.
Like Mortal Coil is a Horrify, right? It's not a fear.
Biggest potential for a Mythic
break.
Plus trinket that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
All right, here we've got a couple other ones, which at the time of this article written weren't yet implemented, but they are now. Grim Eclipse is a Rygolon trinket. It's int trinket. Its on use is Manifest a Quasar, which orbits your target, which is not really what Quasars do, but that's okay. It blasts it with 556 cosmic damage over 7 seconds. After 7 seconds, the Quasar stabilizes, creating an event horizon for 15 seconds, which grants you 83 haste while within its perimeter. So, yeah, it sends an orbiting damage blaster to the target, and then after 7 seconds, maybe once it's done a full rotation, it gets back to where you cast it from, potentially, plops onto the ground and makes a haste zone for you.
Why does it say until canceled?
Oh.
Is it a channel?
Stuff just says until canceled, and it doesn't mean anything.
Okay. As long as it's not a channel, then it's
I don't see until canceled anywhere. Oh, over until canceled. Yeah, that just on the actual tooltip here it says over 7 seconds. So
okay,
that until canceled is like that means that there's some number that in the tooltip that isn't like sorted out yet or something.
Yeah. Okay. That trinket doesn't look bad. I suspect that the damage on it's not great. I think that the haste is pretty good, and if you can line it up with your CDs, it's probably wearable as a DPS. It's gonna not be great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how it will work. So like if I cast this from 30 yards away, it really depends on how the orbiting mechanic works, right? If I cast this from 30 yards away, is it just going to start orbiting where I am, and 7 seconds later, is it going to come back to where I am, or is it going to be like at a random other spot? At some other amount, like not 360 degrees? Is it going to orbit 200 degrees or 500 degrees or something like that and be on the other side of the boss?
Always the problem with trinkets like this is like it's competing with Soul Letting Ruby. It's an on-use trinket.
Yeah.
Is it going to be better than Soul Letting Ruby? I don't know. Probably not.
It doesn't quite have double on-use potential because it only gives you, 2 seconds of haste while your next cooldown or your next trinket is off cooldown. So otherwise it would potentially have that effect.
I feel like these trinkets are such an extreme version of how they word their tooltips. Like,
yeah.
Whoever the developer was for these was given their project, and they were like, use as many space terms as you can and be as confusing as possible.
That dude, Rygolon, the entire Rygolon dungeon journal is just a thesaurus of space words as well. That's great. All right, up next we have the Scars of Fraternal Strife. This is a jailer trinket. It has no stats, but it has an equip that says affix a domination rune to yourself, gaining power at a price. We're not 100% sure what the equip does. We do have a pretty good idea of what the on-use does, though, which says add another, and it's on a 30-second cooldown. And there are a bunch of spell IDs that are called the first rune, the second rune, all the way up to the final rune, which is the 5th rune. The first rune gives you some haste, and says 10% of damage you take will echo again 3 seconds later, so that's a downside. The second rune gives you some verse. All healing you take is reduced by 5%, though. The third rune gives you some crit, but you bleed for a small amount of damage. The fourth rune gives you some mastery, but your spells and abilities reduce your movement speed by 2% for 15 seconds, stacking up to 10 times.
Hard pass.
The worst
Hard
of
pass
these
on that
effects.
one, no matter what.
But you may have to use all of them in order to get access to the final rune, which is your crit, haste, mastery, and verse are all increased by twice as much as any one of them was increased by the previous runes. And when the final rune fades, explode for 9,000 damage.
So numerically, this trinket is not bad, is what I've read.
Yeah, we aren't 100% sure how all of it works, but yeah, I mean, there's nice amounts of stats there. Potentially every 2.5 minutes, right? You're getting access to that final rune effect, which is a lot of stats. You could delay it to be every 3 minutes as well. Line it up with your 3 minutes.
So, I mean, trinkets like this are kind of hard to balance. So, like, say they do like nerf this thing. This thing doesn't have main stat on it, so it's a hard trinket just to wear in general. And then, like, the other thing is, can you pre-use the rune prior to pulling a boss, or does it reset on pull?
Yeah, also, what is the passive? The passive affix a domination rune to yourself, gaining power at a price. Like, does that just mean you're always going to have the first rune? Or does that mean that there's another rune that wasn't one of the ones we looked at that you're going to have?
Yeah.
Because if you always have the first rune, then maybe that means you every 2 minutes you can get to the final rune instead of every 2.5. I don't know.
But one of the biggest things is, like, numerically, this trinket's not supposed to be that bad. Like,
I mean, it's the jailer trinket. Like, it's supposed to.
The amount of stats that you're getting is pretty high.
They usually push the Denathrius trinket, the Sylvanas trinket, the jailer trinket. Like, those usually get power enough that they are better than other trinkets at the same item level. So we'll see if that ends up being true for this one as well. Another jailer trinket is called Chains of Domination. It's Agi or Strength. On use, drive a spike into your target, dealing a bunch of physical damage, creating a chain link between you and them for 20 seconds. While the chain persists, 25% of all damage dealt to the target is stored within it, and that's damage dealt from anybody, up to a maximum, though, that is substantially less than the initial damage of the hit. Moving away from your target will rip the chain out, dealing the stored amount of shadow damage to all enemies within 8 yards of them, which is
interesting.
Yeah, potentially sweet. So
3-minute CD though.
Yeah, that is the downside. It is a lot of damage though, and this is the 233 version we're looking at. It would be much more at the mythic version of this thing. I could see this being used.
Soul capacitors.
I can see this being used as okay. Imagine you're a brewmaster. Not too hard for you to try, I assume. You go into your pull, you hit this on use on one of the mobs, and then once it's stored up the full amount of damage, you ring a piece of the pack away, and the chain breaks, and it does big AoE to the whole pack. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I don't know.
I feel like that's more of a melee DPS thing, though. Like, I mean, tank trinkets are pretty set for high keys. Yeah. Honestly, like you want DR stuff, but if that wasn't a 3-minute CD, I could see that being a pretty good AoE trinket for DPS.
It's going to be kind of annoying that you have to move away from the target to rip the chain out and do the AoE damage, but a lot of AoE damage. We'll see. I wonder if this is like a hunter trinket as well. Hunter just runs in, presses button, runs back out.
It immediately rips the chain out?
No, like rips the chain out once it's stored up enough damage.
I mean, this is probably gonna be a rogue trinket. I mean, it's kind of similar to Soul Cap, except it's an on use. It really comes down to, like, numerically, is this trinket going to be good or not? I think that this one at least has substantial more usability than the remainder of the trinkets.
Oh, it's also shadow damage on the AoE.
Yeah,
that's big for sub.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, there is our little look at the trinkets. Hope people found that one an interesting topic. Of course, most of these trinkets are going to suck. Most trinkets suck, but some of them have some potentially interesting uses. Most of them probably do suck, though. So my suspicion is that the Tazvesh trinkets are the good ones, and the Covenant Sat Stick, and most of these other ones will suck. But it's worth pointing out that whenever a raid tier starts and all of the raid trinkets suck, they usually buff the raid trinkets. They've done that a couple times, like 2 different times in the past 5 tiers. The raid has come out and the trinkets have all been bad, and they've like buffed them by 50%. So be on the lookout. Could happen here.
Man, that's gonna be weird. Like trying to understand all these weird trinkets early on to be ready for the buffs. That'll be you've got your astronomy themed trinkets. You've got your Automa group that's all trying to have Automa die and figure out which things count as Automa. It's gonna be good times.
I mean, dude, I have an IQD and a healer that's slow on mana, and I'm here to give them mana. Don't worry about it.
One of the boomkins in my guild has Innervate on our mana hungriest healer, macroed into his Celestial Alignment now.
And
all right, let's move on to the thanking of the patrons.
I fixed it this week.
This week, Kettles has actually fixed the Patreon names. We're sorry about him not doing it last week. He's really very embarrassing for all of us here, as he's now getting up and walking away, and I can freely speak about him. He can't hear. They are: Paul got ghosted by Renewing Mist. He's back together with Riptide now. Yep. Happy birthday, Nix. Happy birthday, Nix. 9.2 on 2/22/2022 on a Tuesday. WoW 2.0 conspiracy confirmed. Dranos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Never Nude, Chewy. Boomkins analyzed scientifically by expert Dratnos, or based. Delete Gaming is really happy to play cross-faction. Let's go. It's not AMZ, it's AMZ. Salty Senny, Necris, Tankdill, Nevuk, Bread Ceratops, Sinmora, EV Survival Name, No Trick, I Scheduled a Tettle's Flame, Dimat, Lufer, Nix. Raider.io's Guild Finder tool is great. This ad was not paid for by Raider.io. It's a real testimonial from a raider looking for a guild. Gallic, Brusif, Dranos Shards Abyss, Dratnos' basement stash of copium. Yeah, broke into that stash a little bit for some of these trinkets. M Sanity, Xena. Rogue is now good enough for Prog, still bad enough to be sat for SLG, bless up. Red Color, youtube.com/workbringer, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, #1 Simsky for Trelsky. Lurka says, in a very Australian accent, I'm going to try this in a very Australian accent.
Oh, no.
Crikey, it's not my fault. Wait. I got flamed for not interrupting an Arathi Basin comp stomp. Milk. Benil, a.k.a. YOLO Swag Crew. Word around the Mage Tower is Trell has fantastic eyeballs and is now 3k. Sife, Pone, Windwalker monks deal with nerfs by rolling with the punches, and Wonder. Thanks all for the support, and sorry to all the Australians. Up next is the Q&A segment. Our first one comes from NZXT in Discord, who asks, it's related to M+, and since a lot of streamers did a lot of pushing last week, there were many tricks to pull bosses or mobs far away. For example, the Little Ragnaros toy for DHs and Monk, the Jinji knife set were used. Could you elaborate on the techniques and other toys or items that can be used to achieve the same effect, since not everyone is exalted with the tillers? Trell, what do you know about these different toys?
So that's referencing the effect that, this is hard to explain, but currently in the game, if you're a monk or demon hunter and you're targeting something at all, you can pull it with your Mystic Touch / Chaos Brand passive if you get in combat right then, or you take damage at that moment. And you're getting some other effect to like proc that. So what people were doing before was they're taking damage while being affected by Blessing of Sacrifice or the Empower from a Guardian Druid. And they removed that part that worked. But somehow people are applying Mystic Touch and Chaos Brand with other toys now without even needing sack or anything.
Yeah.
Also, that knife set, I've seen people pull Executor Tarvald to like the lantern right outside of the, do you know like the imp lantern outside of the Crixus room? People are like snapping Tarvald into that room.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So they can just do the boss without the whole rotating thing around the arena.
I'm looking for a clip of it. I can't find any.
Yeah, I would say the short-term fix to this is probably making Chaos Brand and Mystic Touch not aggro things when applied, like Hunter's Mark and stuff doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's definitely the biggest overall cause of the problem. People are just finding ways to make toys proc that.
I will say that another common thread is it's always a toy, right? There's always some toy that is doing something broken in dungeons, right? It's like spiders to give you stacks, train set to give you stacks, and Sanguine Deaths, all these different toys. Do you remember that week where we had Ranka's escape plan, the cauldron that you jumped into and it dropped threat? And so you just had the whole group do a shroud skip just on mounts and then jump into this cauldron toy and drop threat.
Jump into your pots and the mobs are like, where'd they go?
Mobs were like, oh. They ran away. So I kind of like Yoda's take here, which is items should not be blacklisted or disabled from M+ when they get found to be bugged. They should just be whitelisted instead, because every week there's a new way to pull bosses through walls and stuff, which I kind of agree with. I think there's a lot of cool toys in the game, and many of them can be abused for M+, and I think they could just go through and like all the ones that change your character model they can whitelist, and all the other ones they could just blacklist off the bat, and you know, it would be like,
yeah, I agree with that. I think it's one thing. It's not a huge deal when you can pull through the mist walls with like pets or covenant abilities, but pulling something 500 yards away and just removing several very important mechanics because you're doing that is really, really bad for the dungeon play, in my opinion.
They're snapping like tormented mobs like 70 yards away, and then, dude, once I saw them snap Executor Tarvald to that lantern right after they got the lantern buff, I was like, well, okay, well, this is so doomed, man. Like, how is this even a thing?
All right, up next comes a question from Narnar in Discord, who asks, what is your general rule for Necrotic Wake weapon usage, and how does it change for Fortified versus Tyrannical? Trell, how do you prefer to use the weapons?
So eventually, when you get high enough in key level for Necrotic Wake, you kind of have to commit a lot to the last boss, no matter what, if it's Fortified or Tyrannical. But if you're doing like mid-level keys, you can commit a lot of weapons on trash for Fortified. Like the first boss pull, you almost always want to put a bunch of trash on the boss and spear it. That's a pretty common thing on Fortified or Tyrannical, actually, for that one, because it gets both with one stone. And you have the Goliath orbs going at the same time. What my group did this season is we did a spear on the first boss because we had trouble killing the worms. We didn't have a great comp for that. A lot of people will do a spear on the second boss, or they'll save all 3 spears for the last 2 bosses, regardless of Tyrannical or Fortified. The variability with the orbs, like the big orb that you pick up, is a little bit different. Like sometimes you want to save an orb for a double pull upstairs in Necrotic Wake on Fortified. You can maybe do that same pull on Tyrannical without the orb, or you can do it, you can just decide what your comp needs during that run. Or on High Tyrannical, you save that second big orb for the very last boss to break one of the shields. So you have like 3 hammers, 1 big orb, and a spear for that last boss.
Yeah, I think the last boss is definitely an important place to use them. If you start getting that key level up. All right, Tettles has found us a clip for that last question about the knife, so we can take a quick look at this. This is coming from Nerf Tank TV stream, and yeah, you can see they're just past the first boss at that lantern, and they get to snap the Executor Tarvald here with the...
They snap Sagadon.
Oh, they snap Sagadon, okay.
Yeah. But you can snap Tarvald as well.
From Sagadon from down by the third boss?
They want the shields for the first boss.
Amazing.
Because they have an H-Pal.
Amazing.
But yeah, so they use the technology. Knife kit, and I don't even think it's from the... I don't think it's the Windwalker monk applying the debuff. I don't even know what it is.
Interesting. It looks like Nerf doing it, yeah. Looks like Nerf's doing it on this bear there. So I think the knife kit does something a little bit different. It's the only thing that even makes sense. You just use it and pull something from all the way over there. Yeah. I will say, among the list of toys, I bet there are like 5 or 10 more that do this kind of stuff that I haven't discovered yet. So
apparently the toy just pulls regardless, and it deals reflect damage, and so that's why it's
so you need to be taking damage.
You need a corpse. You need a humanoid corpse.
Interesting.
Because you have to activate the knife kit. I think the knife kit is like
the knife kit needs a humanoid corpse, and then it does damage to your target at any range.
God, I've never seen this toy. It's some mock toy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought all these still required the class debuffs, but I guess not. Toys are just busted.
Yeah.
As usual.
Amazing.
Here it is. Gingy knife set. Yeah, so you chop, mince, and somewhere that starts with a J, a fresh humanoid or beast corpse.
Julienne? Is that what it is?
That is the word.
All
yes.
Right, let's go.
Dratnos, a man of culture.
Very cool.
Yeah. So you have to target the mob, though. But it's cringe.
Certainly is, and likely will get fixed. But for now, that is the way you can pull stuff from really far away. So go and get that Tillers rep, everybody. It's from Valley of the Four Winds. It's a fun rep. It's one of the most fun. Actually, if I had to do rep grinds ranked, I would say Tillers, and especially the farm, in Half Hill is up there with like Molten Front as being some of the best rep grinds they've done. Anyways, that's the end of our questions and the end of our show. We will be back next week with the final Titanforge podcast before the patch. We'll figure out what the show schedule is going to be like during the first few weeks of the patch. Expect some disruptions, and we'll figure it out, and we will let you know when we know. But that's the end of this one. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.